make it, unfortunately.
Oh,
Um,
and then we're live now.
we're
So,
live.
okay.
Good afternoon, Reshonda, and hello to the people who are currently tuning in. Welcome to our fourth episode of our Pi 515 Super Series. My name is Sujal, and I will be a junior this up and coming school year at North High.
Hi, I'm Marlo, and I'm going to be a senior this fall at Des Moines Christian. In this super series, we will interview CEOs and executives of big organizations about their journey and the advice they want to provide for the youth of today's world.
The goal of this segment is to connect leaders in today's workforce with youth seeking guidance who have rich and engaging conversations to learn about the future of work.
All right, just to get started, could you tell us about yourself, your name, job, a brief description of your career, and maybe one interesting fact?
Yeah, so my name is Reshonda Young. I am a business consultant and the co-founder of Bank of Jabez. I grew up in Waterloo and just went to college not far off the road in Waverly at Wartburg College. And I'd say, like, my career path, I've worked in many jobs over the years, but I've always, since college, knew that um, I had an entrepreneurial spirit and have always kind of gone down the path of entrepreneurship as um, I started off with investing in real estate as a landlord, doing some real estate development now, opened a popcorn company, ran my dad's transportation companies, and opening a bank. So lots of different things. And I guess interesting or a fact about me would be that even though a lot of people don't recognize it anymore, I am an extreme introvert. And
Me too.
so,
Me too, definitely.
yeah.
Okay, it's really cool.
Um, as someone who loves popcorn, what led you to start Popcorn Heaven? Since we know that popcorn is such a unique food, and we were just curious to know like what your thought process was behind starting a business behind popcorn.
So, probably doesn't sound the greatest, but there was no plan. Like, I didn't have like these dreams of popcorn kernels, going through my head. It was really more of like a divine type of a download that this is
Mhm.
what I was supposed to be doing. And just like praying on, okay, if I'm supposed to be doing this popcorn business, what's the name and what am I doing and all the things. And, the name came and all the things that I was supposed to be doing came about. And I know sometimes it's like, oh, that sounds just kind of frilly. But the fact is, like, it all happened, and so, yeah, it was a really fun business, but what I see is that the popcorn business gave me experience that nobody else was going to give me. Nobody else was going to give me experience in running a franchise and developing this whole model. Like, nobody else was going to give me that experience, and the popcorn company created that, which has helped to really propel a lot of other things that I'm doing.
From that, what are some key lessons you learned throughout the process of starting and selling your business, and how have you used those lessons? As you said, like you gained invaluable experience running the franchise. Like, what would you say those lessons are?
First one is to think really big. When I started the company, the idea was, even though it was certain in this small store in downtown Waterloo, I never wanted it to look like it was just me. I wanted it to look like it was something bigger than what it was. And we were really successful, like myself and my team were really successful in making people think, and not that we said that it was something that was, that had been around for years and years, but the branding of it made people think that we were like established and all the things, and we weren't. But even before we opened, I had people saying, "Hey, um, I've been to a popcorn heaven in wherever they were at," and it's like, "Oh yeah, you haven't, you have not, because this is not." I didn't tell them that. I'm like, "Oh great." But like, yeah, you haven't. So like, thinking big, and because I thought bigger than just me, it's expanded to 6 different states, and even though I'm out of the popcorn business, it still lives on. So, like, think big. You live once, why live in fear? Don't live with regrets of, oh, I could have, should have, what would have happened if I would have, tried this thing that I really wanted to try. I think fear holds so many people back, like the uncertainties of life. Life is uncertain anyway. Like, we don't know what the next breath is going to bring. So, like, why live on the sidelines? Just play all out.
As, this is kind of an off-topic question, but what would you say was your favorite popcorn flavor?
Dill pickle.
Typical?
Really?
Yes, definitely my
Oh,
favorite. Yep.
yeah, I've had dill pickle chips, but not dill pickle popcorn. I might
Yeah.
Yep, it
definitely
was
try
dill
that.
pickle, and then the next would have been salt and vinegar. So those two, you mix them together, and I was in popcorn heaven.
I Salt and vinegar is by far my favorite type of chip. I haven't
Yep,
had his popcorn though, so might definitely have to
that's
go
good
try that.
for
All right.
sure.
So then, yeah. So many young people face like challenges and uncertainties when like wanting to pursue their dreams and ambitions. What advice would you maybe share with the youth to help them navigate these obstacles and just tell them to stay focused in their dreams and careers?
Yeah, so sometimes when we're facing challenges, we feel ashamed that we are having problems. And what I found is that if you learn to story tell, you tell your story, like, what is your story? Learn to tell your story, and you just never know what's going to happen. Like, for example, when I started with real estate, it was like pretty much right out of college. I moved back from college, living in my parents' basement, and I didn't have money, but I thought my credit was good until I pulled my credit and realized that my identity had been stolen, and it was a really, really awful case of identity theft. So how are you going to start buying real estate when you have, like, the worst credit imaginable? um, I told my story. I told people what I was going through. I had other people then who were sharing because it was such a wild, crazy story. And the first rental property that I bought, I did not go through a bank. There was a man in Clive, Iowa, who I never personally met or talked to, who heard my story and just sent the message saying he wanted to give me a chance. And if I could figure out how to get 20%, he would wire me the 80% that I would need. And that's how I bought my first property. So when you're facing challenges, don't be afraid to tell your story. Like, know your story and tell your story, not for pity, but sometimes you just never know who can help you. And that's been a big part of my journey, is just being willing to tell my story, and never looking for pity for anything, but just sharing, because a lot of times people will go through things in silence, and it just stifles not just that particular thought or project, but it can really stifle your entire life. My life was absolutely changed in an incredible way that still 20 years later is having immensely positive effects on my life, because I told my story in this one man that I never met. Even to this day, I wouldn't know if he walked down the street right now who he was. Um, he changed my life, and it's because I was willing to tell my story.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, like just how many people are out there that like maybe don't tell their story and then they maybe miss out on opportunities just because there are people out there that maybe would have reached out and helped them. But
Exactly.
okay, and then going off of your like credit card being like identity being stolen, how would you say that like maybe to prevent that from happening like for in college or high school, like how would we keep our credit okay or like safe?
Social security numbers, you guard them with your life in a sense. Um, being really careful as well about um, using debit cards. I would much rather use, even though I understand people with their credit card issues, like, if somebody takes your money on a debit card, and let's say you need to pay rent, and that's the money that's in your bank account, that money is gone, and it may take you may be able to get it back, but it may take a while. Then your rent's behind and all these things. If I have to actually use like a credit card, I just prefer to use a credit card and then I'll just pay that credit card off so that people don't actually have access to my cash because even just looking at what happened with me within I found out about the identity theft within like a month of it starting, and it was tens of thousands of dollars of credit and all kinds of things that have been done in a very short period of time. You don't want your cash to be tied up, so protect your social security number. Like, use wallets, like the digital wallets, and make sure that passwords are protected. And it is an absolute nightmare to go through something like that. So even though it may seem extreme for some of the things like the digital wallets and all this, but it can, I mean, if you go through identity theft ever, like you'll be like, oh yeah, like don't take any unnecessary chances. But I
Yeah.
will say one thing: if you use a credit card, only use it if you can pay it off at the end of the month. Like if you can't pay it off at the end of the month, don't use it. Little
Yeah,
side note.
definitely. Yeah. And then,
Um,
oh, sorry.
very good.
But, yeah, so how would you recommend like being able to like if you can't pay off your credit card by like the end of the month or something, or like the interest is too high? Like how would you recommend maybe going about that if maybe people can't use their credit card? Like,
The first thing is, especially for young people, and I love working with young people because most young people have a pretty clean slate. And
mhm.
so, most of the time, young people don't have credit card debt and a bunch of high bills that they're paying. So, what I encourage young people to do, like when you are like 15, 16, whenever you're starting to work, take like 50%, like try to live on only like 50%, no more than 60% of your income. And so if you start in that habit as a teenager before you get a bunch of bills, then once you actually get to the point where, okay, well, I need to, pay for rent, I need to get like a house or an apartment or a car. If you're used to living on 60%, my challenge is always for people: live on 60% of your income. And why do I say 60%? Because, like, for adults, if something were to happen, like you needed a knee replacement, or I don't know, you're off of work for, a month or two, if you get short term disability, it's only going to pay 60%. If you're used to living on 100% of your income, you're going to go into your credit cards, you're going to end up going into debt, you're going to be in a mess because you're used to living on too much money. As a young person, if you can get into that habit, and I will say, I don't just tell people that, but I live that myself. If you can get into that habit when you're young, and then what do you do with the other 40%? I mean, you can choose, but what I do with my other 40%, 10% I give. So whether it be to my church or other charitable organizations, 10% is given away. Um, 10% is used for savings. 10% is used for investment, and 10% is used for a fun account because we don't want to live life without vacations and fun. And we don't want to put vacations and fun on a credit card that we can't pay off. So for young people, like, figure out it, like, so even though I may only be living on 60% for my living expenses, that other 40%, besides the 10% I'm giving away, still is for me. So for young people in particular, get used to living on 60%.
That's a really good like motto to live by, and like just a like a good like lifestyle to like try to like just be like save and I'll do all of that stuff. And I really
Yeah,
like
and
the
then
fun account.
for sure, you have to have a fun account.
Yeah.
But the other thing is it also encourages you, like, as you like get out into the job market and someone offers you a certain amount of money and it's like, okay, well, is this going to allow me to live on 60% or do I need to negotiate for a higher salary or a higher wage? Like, you look at that and it gives you also like a little bit more um, incentive to negotiate for higher pay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Leading on to that, what led you to start the Bank of Jabez? I'm sorry if I
Yeah.
mispronounced it.
You didn't.
Um,
That was perfect.
Thank you. What led you to found the Bank of Jabez, the first black-owned bank in Iowa? Could you share your vision for the bank and its impact on the community?
Yeah. So, being a small business owner and being a small business owner coach and like the franchising and then running my dad's companies, what I found was that Black and other minority business owners had a tougher time than our white counterparts. And then women also have a tougher time than men getting credit and access to capital. It was it was unnecessarily difficult. The only times that I felt like I was really able to go into a bank and have my needs met in a way that like my white male counterparts maybe were doing business was when I had a really good relationship with someone high up in the bank. If I were just walking in and nobody knew me, you're just going based on like the fact that you see me first, and then you may look at my credit and things. But sometimes, like people will see you, and because of what you look like, they don't do business with you. And so there were a lot of things, like a lot of really challenging things that really could have just made me say, I'm throwing in the towel. Like this, I'm tired. I'm tired of struggling to get the things that my white male friends are able to get and do so much easier. But I just, once again, I'm going into prayer and I'm like, God, I'm really tired. Like there's so many things, like so many really bad things that have happened just because of the fact that I'm I'm black and I'm a woman, and they are just things that are happening that should not be happening. And I just kept very, very distinctly hearing, "You're going to start a bank," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't want to do that. Like that is too big of a project. I can't do that by myself." The introvert in me just wants to like be at home and not have to deal with all this. Give me something else to do. And it's like, no, you're going to start this bank. And then I'm saying, well, but I'm not qualified. I've never worked at a bank. I've never been a teller. I've never been a loan officer. I've never ever worked at a bank. Like, how am I supposed to start a bank? Um, but my journey in life is definitely a faith journey, and it's like if I hear the voice of God just saying, "This is what you're to do," kind of like with popcorn, that's what I end up doing. And so I'm starting this bank
yeah.
in order to make access to capital more equitable. It should not matter that, Marlo, you are a female. That should not matter if you
Mhm.
go into a bank. You know, what should matter is like what you're presenting. And that's not always the case. And I found that out firsthand and also with working with other people. And so improving access to capital affects families in particular in so many ways. Like if you've got access to capital to be able to purchase a home, I mean, that's where so much wealth is generated with people is through being able to purchase a home. So many people are not able to for various reasons. When we were doing some research back in like the 40s and 50s, Black families, about 50 to 60% of Black families actually own their homes. Now it's in the 30s, and that's in Waterloo. And so one of the things that I had looked at, or like those of us who were looking, we had looked at, is that there was a savings and loan. There was a Black savings and loan back then. There were also some other initiatives through the Catholic Church that were going on that were focused on home ownership within Black community. And so once those institutions weren't there anymore, people aren't getting the loans that they need in order to buy homes. And there's not, an opportunity to pass down the wealth that our white counterparts who have home ownership rates in the 70%. Like that's, I mean, more than double. It, it's really a game changer for not just blacks, but women's, Hispanics, other minority groups who are here. Um, just cutting out the race, the gender, the identity, like how people may identify themselves, cutting all that stuff out and doing business in a way that is honoring to people and to their monies and to them as a human being.
Yeah, it's kind of just like looking at people like just as they're just a person, just like anybody
That's it.
else in the world is.
That's
All
it.
right, and then yes, and then going off of that, what would you say would be your like defining moment? Because I feel like everyone in their career has had moments that stand out to them, and so like, what would you say yours has probably been?
There've been a few, but I'd say it was the defining moment, which is a bad moment that thankfully is being turned into something good. But that defining moment was when, after being a landlord for almost 20 years and going to a bank that I used to have friends in high places who were no longer there, and working, trying to work with new people who didn't necessarily have a relationship with me, um, and being told that they didn't want my business. I needed to move my accounts, that if I chose not to, they were going to foreclose, they're going to take everything I own, and all these threats and all these things that they did to really try and like destroy the things that I had been working for 20 years to build. And that was really that thing that I was just like, that's when I'm like, God, what do you want me to do? I'm so tired of this fight. And just really understanding that this fight is so much bigger than Reshonda, that I'm not fighting this battle because I need, for myself, but it's for the younger generations and generations to come, and those within my generation who, are still building businesses and buying homes and whatever they're doing. It is not about me at all, but that bad moment just really changed the focus and trajectory of what it is that I'm doing.
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely more about like looking like more like past yourself and realizing it's not just all about you, and that you gotta
Right.
include everybody into it. It definitely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because sometimes if I'm just like, oh, I'm just fighting for myself, sometimes if it's just about me, I might not push as hard. But when I can think about all the other people who are potentially impacted, it just makes me push so much harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Leading on from that, you have successfully won a lawsuit against the Consumer Financial Bureau of Protection. We're curious to know your perspective. What steps do you think should be taken on a larger scale to reduce systematic prejudice in the banking industry for the next generation? Like, we're just curious to know that.
Yeah, so with that lawsuit,
Mhm.
there was a Hispanic group in California, a white female in Oregon, and myself who brought that lawsuit. And we were on an oversight committee to make sure that the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but CFPB actually implemented the laws that were already on the books that they weren't enforcing. So we were on an oversight committee to make sure that all these things were put in place. Um, and so they have met all of their deadlines to be able to fulfill the promises and the laws, being enforced. My bigger thought on that, though, is that if someone does not want to do something, they generally will find a way around a law. It doesn't matter if it's a banking law or, speeding or what, I don't know, whatever it is, people will find a way around it. And that is one of the reasons why I think it's so important that Bank of Jabez is founded, is because we want this. We want equitable treatment. We want the things that the laws are enforcing. We want them, and we want them on a bigger scale. Like what the laws say that we have to do, like we're not even going by their standards because our standards for ourselves are so much higher. So when when I look at it, like, okay, now the laws are in place and we were able to like make sure that all the deadlines are met, and we get to have some oversight over these things. But if a bank decides that they really don't want to be equitable, or that they don't like this particular population of people, they'll find ways to discriminate. I mean, they just will. It's just part of it. And so I think like Bank of Jabez and other institutions who actually are building or have built a culture of equity and inclusivity are important. I want to see more institutions like us being formed, because oftentimes you can't change a person's heart, and changing a culture of an organization that's been around for 50 years or 100 years literally is really difficult. And so, if you've got the heart of the leaders and the employees, and like the vision and culture of an organization that are aligned with equity and inclusivity and belonging and all of the things, then you don't have to worry about the laws. Like, you are going so much further above and beyond what any law is going to tell you to do.
So would you
Yeah.
say that we just need to change our culture overall of banking?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's a cultural shift that needs to happen in interest rates that are paid on accounts. Um, there's when you go into a lot of local banks, you will see that the interest rates are really low. But if you go into an online bank, those interest rates are higher. Some of it is just costs. They may not have as many costs, but you know, with banks, the thing that we have to look at is like they need to be held to the same standards that us regular people are held to. How are you managing your funds? How are you running your business? How are you how are you attracting and keeping your customers? Well, interest rates are an important part. And if you're not managing your finances as a bank, um, how are you then evaluating other people and holding them to standards that you can't hold yourself to? And so changing the culture of even the interest rates that are paid, who is hired. We have a large population of non-English speakers. So if you go into a bank where you um, only speak English, or have people who speak English, then what about those who speak, French or Spanish, or Bosnian, these other languages that where we have high populations of people. So there's a lot that needs to be changed within the banking industry, and a lot of the cultures of banks, to make sure that they are accepting, like people feel accepted, and um, just that like they're really included and valued, and that their dollars are valued as well.
So what would you recommend the banks, like as a teenager and as a person who will be a young adult soon, like what bank accounts do you think um, we should open up?
So I I think the first thing is to open up a high yield savings account, because interest rate does matter. One thing I was going over with my stepdad like 2 or 3 years ago, I'm like, okay, if you have, and I'll give you, I mean, just rough examples, not necessarily the real examples, but you've got $50,000 in this account that is paying 0.01%. And at that time, I'm like, okay. And if I have that same $50,000 in an account that's paying 2.5%, holy cow, the interest on that, there's such a big difference. Like, or right now, if you have your money in an account that might be paying 0.5%, but you could have those same dollars in an account that is literally paying 4%, and there's no penalty to take the money out. You don't have to have a large balance. I mean, start an account with $5 and you're earning 4%, um, instead of 0.5%. I mean, that is, you know, what, 8 times more, or, yeah, 8 times more. It adds up fast. So a high yield savings account, I think, is really, really important. And then The other thing I would say to start young is if you're working and you're getting a paycheck, open up a Roth IRA. So start your retirement early, and you'll be amazed at how much less you have to save in order to be a multimillionaire than if you wait and start doing those things when you're, you know, 25 or 30. I mean, it makes a huge difference. Open up a high yield savings account, open up a Roth IRA if you're working.
So what I'm hearing is we could all potentially be millionaires.
Oh my gosh, hands down, you should all be millionaires before you're 40.
Okay.
It's crazy.
Leading on from that, yeah. Leading on from that, what motivated you to pursue a career as an advocate for social justice and equity, and how do you balance that passion with your businesses?
I feel like my businesses have been an integral part of the social justice advocacy work that I've done. And so I've tried to have my businesses lead as an example. Like, I'm not just talking about this stuff, but I'm actually doing it. So, like with banking and the changes and the difference that we're creating, that is part of the whole social justice advocacy work. And a lot of times it's picked up by like political organizations. And it doesn't matter, if they're Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. When they see something that is being changed, a lot of times people will reach out and they want to talk more, they want to hear more. Um, so the balancing it is pretty simple because the work that I do and the things that I advocate for are the same. Like, I'm advocating for justice, even in the popcorn store, like pay equity. The women are going to make the same as what the men make. When I was working with my dad and realized that he was paying women less than he was paying men, I'm like, no. Like, we're changing this and it is being changed now. Call the accountant. These women have raises up to the point where their male counterparts are like not playing those games. Like everything that I do, it's like it's not like my life is one thing over here and it's something totally different over here. It's me living one life in like the most equitable, fair way that like helps people move their lives forward as possible. Like, it all is intertwined.
Yeah, definitely. Would you say that your faith also then plays like a super integral part in it? Because like I mean, I myself am a Catholic, so I like my religion guides like pretty much everything that I do. So would you say that that's
Absolutely.
kind of yeah.
It absolutely, absolutely does. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. And then how would you say that you stay like resilient and maintain your commitment to advocacy and community service, even like when you're faced with the challenges and setbacks from other people even?
Yeah, always knowing that like my life is so much bigger than me. Our life experiences are not just meant for us, but they're meant for other people as well. Um, Really pressing into my faith and just understanding like what am I supposed to be doing? Like, we're all put here for a purpose, and I want to make sure that I live that purpose out in my life. Like, what a waste it would be if I don't live out my purpose and live life to the fullest, not just for myself but helping other people. So like always thinking of things in a way that it's just bigger than me. Like, times are going to be hard, things are going to happen that we can't foresee, um, but not letting those things just completely derail us off of the path that God has for our lives.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Leading on from that, as someone who procrastinates and yet has like multiple responsibilities at school and like extracurriculars, how do you identify and prioritize projects that align with your goals and values and for the community?
So one thing that I find really important for me is because there are so many things going on that if I just start to think about oh my gosh, I've got 7 projects going on and they're all big things. Like, what in the world am I going to do? Like, I can't do that. Nothing will happen. I, I'll just be like overwhelmed. So, like, each night, I think it's important, at least for me, it's important for me to write down and like think about what are the things that need to happen tomorrow. Like, I wake up tomorrow, what things need to happen? And like detailing those things out and knowing what my schedule looks like, not just writing them out, but then also writing down at this time I need to be doing this, and at this time I need to be doing that. Like writing down the times, and it almost becomes like a game. Like, okay, I need to email these 3 people back between 9 o'clock and 9:40. And it almost becomes a game. Like, okay, can I actually get it done by 9:35 or whatever? But like whatever it is that's gonna kind of motivate you. But it's like really thinking about each day, whether it's the night before or if you get up really early, and planning that day out, because and giving yourself timelines to get things done as well. Um, because procrastination is a serious, I mean, like it's real. I can suffer from it at times. And like if I think about everything that I have going on, instead of like I have to get these things done today, then I'll just be dibbling and dabbling in everything and nothing gets done.
Okay. Because
Yeah, at
when
my
I
house.
usually have
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, Sujo.
Okay. Because when I usually have like an English assignment or anything, like I usually wait like a couple of days before it's due, so I should probably start writing it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it on the to-do list.
Yeah, no, and definitely at my house, projects are all, we joke it's 86% finished because we never get around to finishing the rest of to the 100%. Like we have one wall that
That's
just is like, it's like half painted and we're like, okay, whatever.
that is so funny. I love it. Yeah.
Right. And then what advice would you give to like youth who want to be more involved in their community but don't really know where they should like look or begin?
So I would say schools are a great place to start. Whether it be like your guidance counselor, they have an enormous amount of information that they can, like if you know you want to be involved in, I don't know, like here there's oh gosh, there's like a youth city council. And so, they maybe could go to their guidance office and find out some information there. Um, of course, asking other people, like your peers, especially those that you see are involved in various things, like, hey, what is this organization I might be interested in? Like, just really like kind of networking and figuring, but first of all, figuring out what it is that you want to be involved in, the things that you think you're going to be most passionate about. Um, and then just asking, not being afraid to ask people, um, you know,
Definitely.
for help or mentorship or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely just like maybe just try to reach out and like see what all there
For
might
sure.
even be. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, and then what book would you recommend to like youth who want to like maybe start like being an entrepreneur and interested in like banking or something like that?
Um, Gosh, there are there are a couple of books. Um, it's old, um, but a mindset book is Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like I'll go back to that one with Robert Kiyosaki. To me, it's more of a mindset thing, because entrepreneurship is oftentimes about mindset. Like you, you're thinking differently than the masses usually, because most people are good with a job. Like a job is not bad. Like a job is a good thing. Um, but then you've got those of us who are like, but I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to do my own thing, and I want to, have the freedom to be able to do some different things and create and whatever. It's all about a mindset. And so I say, Rich Dad Poor Dad for mindset.
All right, I'll check that out then.
Yeah.
Leading on from mindset, what do you think is the most important mindset or skill that the youth should cultivate to like ensure their success both in like their personal life and careers?
Yeah, so kind of going back to the beginning of like live life full out, like don't play on the sidelines, don't live in fear. Oftentimes the things that we are fearing are the things that, I mean, they never even come true anyway, most of the time. And, we've just wasted all this time worrying about something that isn't even real. And so, like, not living life in fear, play all out. You only live once. Most things that you try are not going to kill you or somebody else. And if you think about them and it's like, oh, it could kill me or somebody else, then don't do them. Um, but, just don't be afraid to try things, and don't let anybody tell you that something, like, you can't do something, because if your mind is able to conceive this idea, more than likely you are able to succeed and achieve it.
Right. Well, on that note, thank you, Reshonda, for taking the time to speak with us. We really appreciate it. And for the viewers, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch this series. And we hope to see you all again next week for episode 5 of the CEO Super Series. Have a great day. I don't actually know how to end